of the Shakopee Heritage Society. We are a group of just people who like to know about the history of Shakopee in the area. There's the Scott County Historical Society. We have some connection to them, but it's a separate group because they're going for the whole county, whereas this is specifically Shakopee and Marystown. And we added Marystown because we had people from that were related to here who are doing some of the cleaning that we've been doing. For the last 4 years, we've been cleaning Valley Cemetery. Um, we're almost done with that one, and we're going to move it next to the Catholic Cemetery on 10th Street, and we'll go on beyond that. Meanwhile, one of the person who does some of the stuff here came to our thing, and now she's done a lot of the stones here, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really, you could really see a difference in that too. It's the thing, it's like most of these are pretty good, and this as a cemetery is pretty good, but there's a few that have like this stuff on it, moss or something, and you want to kind of get rid of that, but there's a whole process. It's a special spray that you use.
Like that one behind you back there.
Yeah. So anyway, we want to continue to do that. That's just because you're supposed to honor the dead, right? So I do that. My parents are at the Fort Snelling, but they do it themselves already, so that's already set. So I figure I should continue it on for the rest group. All right. The Shakopee Heritage Society does want to acknowledge that we're gathering here on the land. That's the land of the Dakota people. So we honor and gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it through the ages, including the Neabi. I can't say that word very right. Ojibwa would be another way to say it also, other indigenous nations. So this is St. Mary's of the Purification. Most people call it Marystown Church because it's just the only one here, right? It was founded in 1855. It's an unincorporated community in Louisville Township. It's kind of interesting if you do family tree anyway, and you find the information. Finding this place being Marystown is hard to find until much later, because people kind of, but sometimes they call it Louisville Township. That helps,
And Sand Creek.
And Sands Creek is another, yes, that's often done. Okay. It's interesting that the church here is registered as the National Register of Historical Places. They did that in 1980. That was smart. By the way, St. Mark's and St. Mary's and Shakopee didn't do that. Not a good thing. Because who are they going to try to get rid of right now? Those two. This one's staying. It also helps that there's the graves are right here too, which is perfect. Okay for that. This used to be in 1893, and the convent, which was in 1921. The school was demolished in 1990. The convent moved elsewhere to serve as a private home. Do you know which home that is?
It's one of the Luces.
One of the Luces.
Yeah.
Okay. I know there's so many Luces. I know several Luces too. So.
Yeah, it's
Dave Luce in my
Bennett.
class.
It's one of Lee Luce's kids, and it's not Brad and it's not Bart. It's Bennett or
Someone else.
Your
Brian.
cousins then.
I think it's
Is it? I think it's Brian.
See, now I figure if we're here in this place, someone's going to know,
Yeah.
because someone here seems to have the thing.
And actually, a little tidbit. My sister told
Yeah.
me this, and we're going to go look at the house. They took the bricks from the school and clad the nun's house with them.
Oh.
So I haven't seen it yet, but
It's also interesting that this church is the first parish founded in Scott County. Okay. The first church of this, when it was first built, was still in construction when it had a fire and was destroyed. That was the first one, okay? So they started over. They soon had a half log, half frame church and a log cabin for the priests. They said here that the school was established in 1864. It was taught by saloon keeper John Tice. And it was at the saloon where the school was at. So at least you can do both one. No, I don't say that, but I just, you always laugh because that happens more often than you think in a lot of places. And it's just kind of funny that it was basically started there. Eventually, they expanded the church in 1882, I should say. But there's a weakened wall. It collapsed. And so then they built this one. Okay. The spire was completed the following year. The total building cost was $8,246.62.
How much was that?
For the school was $8,246.62. The fact that they added the 62 is interesting. I would just round it up or something, but that's because I've never been that good at math. Okay.
At that time, there was a Reverend Henry Minor who was a saint, who was a priest here.
Yeah, at that time. Okay, good.
That's what's in my book here,
Yep.
so I'm just kind of reading it.
And it's probably correct too.
Yeah.
They eventually, at 1882, they constructed a small house for attending monks. And I'll talk about that in just a second about that. But anyway, the wood frame school south of the church was torn down in 1893. Then they built the two-story brick building. Eventually, the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis took charge of the parish in 1909. They had a two-story brick rectory was built north of the church in 1910. And again, and this is so interesting because there's so many fires that happened in this church. But okay, on February 28th, 1917, the church was gutted by a fire. It was only left with the stone walls. And within a year, they rebuilt the inside of the church. That's a lot of work.
What was, that's a lot of fires.
I know, that's what I mean. But you
But
know,
it's like-
it happens more. Well, I mean, there's not a fire department here,
Well, sure.
so that doesn't help probably. But I'm guessing they did candles. You know.
Yeah, candles and
I'm guessing that's
and,
probably where.
incense and
Yeah.
a lot of stuff with.
I mean, but it just seems like you think after the first one or the second one, they go, okay, let's not do that part, you know, or something. I don't know. There's rules. You got to follow it. So anyway, the School Sisters of Notre Dame, which later was replaced by lay teachers in 1901, but then they returned and ran St. Mary's School here in 1921. There's a convent built for them southwest of the other buildings. The stained glass windows were donated in 1928, and the school was remodeled in 1963. Here's just a quick picture, but you can see it anyway. But in terms of the stained glass are always beautiful in churches. I mean, it's just fun to look at them, I think. Okay. In 1990, the parish voted to tear down the old school and built a new parish center, which you see here, okay? Then in 1882, there was a monk residence. It was moved to the landing in Shakopee, just so you know. But I would also let you know that I talked to someone and they said they're going to tear it down this year because it's moldy and they can't do anything with it. You can see it. I mean, the picture of it. It's in landing now. You'll see the area, But I'm saying, from somebody told me it's going to be torn down within a year. I was like, yeah, but that's great history there. And they're like, yeah.
Just like the St. Mary's School in Shakopee,
Yeah.
and then with Central
When it's-
Elementary being torn down.
Right. I know it is kind of weird that
Well-
whole area over there now is completely
Shakopee
different.
isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And I grew up in this town, and
The country isn't what it used to be.
my family farm, which was over on O'Dowd, which is West Ridge Bay.
Yeah.
The house was in a controlled burn from the Shakopee Fire Department in 1994. So the family, after my grandmother died, my dad died in '93. The family farm and that was actually the first development. And then guess what? Boom! Everything was taken off all over
Yeah.
the place.
Well, it's same with here. Just here, you still see some farms, but you wonder how long that will last too. Because people want land for houses, I guess.
Wherever you look,
All
there's
right.
houses.
So now we're going to move all the way over there to the other side, right at the very first area over there, a part of the old church too. Stones here, they're really bad. You can hardly see anything on there. She's the person who's in charge.
I'm not in charge.
Well, she's the one who's doing all the work, okay? So if you're interested in like helping with that kind of thing, you might want to talk to her or whatever. It does it so often she's here and she just does it. And it's really, she does it some with the family too, does it sometimes.
Yeah.
Your husband sometimes, or at least he
Yeah.
sits and watch you.
No, he does. Well,
Okay.
well, there's two of them in that over section that are really tall.
Oh.
I'll probably bring him for those.
Yeah.
Because otherwise that's
So anyway, the idea again of cleaning the stones is always nice to know. So our person here is Herman Anton Piper Sr. from 1809 to 1899. And if you know, online at ShakopeeHeritage.org, they have in there about close to 400 people from Shakopee and the area, including this one, and has a whole description, more information about them. So just so you know, if you want to look, you can print that off right from there too. Okay. He was born on February 9th, 1809 in Ensslin, Lower Saxony, Germany. Now remember, I had a stroke, so I'm not really good at saying the words that I look at, so I hope you'll figure out what I'm saying. But he was the son of Johann Hermann Pieper, and his father married Anne Maria Feltmans, and they had one son. That was Johann Hermann Pieper. Then, I guess the mother died, so he married Helen Gasvorst Peter in 1791. She died in 1836 at age 38. But they had a son, Herman Anton Pieper, and a daughter, Evelyn Abela, Ebelena. Someone's going to yell it out and tell me how to say it. Evelyn.
Ever.
That sounds good too.
Sound good?
Yeah, but are you just making that up? Or do you
No,
know?
I think I've heard it.
Okay, because that's the problem. There's some of these names that they don't show up anymore, which is too bad, but it's kind of fun to learn about it. Okay. So anyway, Herman Anton Pieper Sr. Lived, as close, it's actually in Germany, but it's really close to the Holland border, okay? So they had wooden shoes, were near the door to the barn, which is open onto the street. At the end of the street was St. Vitus, which is a Catholic church that was over 500 years old. What's also interesting is that church there in the town of Dorben, that church actually, during World War II, it was one of the few churches that was not destroyed. Okay? The rest of the town was burnt down by the essays. Okay? In fact, they said almost everything in the town was burned except the Pieper's home. Pieper's home. They said why? Adolf Hitler said they want to use that home. So they probably had a pretty nice house, okay? They said that house, which is still standing, wasn't destroyed because the Nazis made it their headquarters. Something to remember, okay? All right. So we do know that Herman Anton Pieper Sr. sailed to America in 1836. They said it took 92 days to get there. That seems like a long time.
Sounds like a wagon train expedition.
Yeah, it's almost the same thing except over the
Yes.
water, I'm guessing. Okay. He arrived eventually in St. Louis. They traveled up the Mississippi River. And St. Louis was a very growing, rapid area, especially from people from Germany. So he married his first wife, Helena Sophie Sanders, in 1843 in St. Louis. Okay. Now, what you got to remember, in 1849, approximately 1/10 of the population of St. Louis died from disease. Okay. They said there's a newspaper article said that 8,445 people died, and most of them was from cholera.
Cholera.
Cholera. I know in my head, like I can tell it's wrong, but it doesn't come out sometimes. So just, all right. So we do know that Helena Sophie Sanders Peter, along with 3 of her children, died from that. Okay. They said that no one was permitted to enter or leave the town. The only one who was living of that family then, besides this guy, was Maria Helena Lena Peter, who was born March 24th, 1848, and lived with his father, Herman Anton Pieper Sr. Okay? So after, again in St. Louis, after he buried his wife and their 3 kids, he went to the local orphanage for nuns and gave them $200 and said, "Would you please take care of my daughter?" Bye, and took on. Okay? While he was there, he also married a second time to Anton Maria Carolina Henke. Okay? So after burying the daughter, gave them the $200 to care for his daughter, and then then he released his team of mules, and he walked to Sacramento, California, to go into the gold rush. He said, "I'm going to make some money with that." Okay. Now, I'm thinking, okay, this is just me. He had team of mules. Why didn't he take the mules to go along with and jump on top? Can't you ride them? I've ridden on a mule before. All right, but anyway, he walked all the way from Missouri to California.
Over the mountains.
Over the mountains. I know, that's quite a thing. By the spring of 1849, the largest gold rush in American history was underway. So it's kind of interesting. On the way to the gold rush, he met a fellow German, and together they mined for several years. Okay? Then, one night, the German skipped town with all of their gold. These people, don't you? I mean, I love these people who do things like this. I just feel like I just want to go over and just slap them. I'm like, come on, people. All right. They said it took another 3 years to accumulate enough gold to return to St. Louis on the railroad. So I'm just.
It's like a Little House on the Prairie episode.
Except I really feel like.
And I watched some old episodes on their gold rush, and
I know,
Yeah.
exactly. But you know what I want to say though is I would go and find that person who they've been together for a lot.
yeah, it's
gold
trust
and
and then
stuff.
all of a sudden deceit. It's like, okay,
But you know, it's just what they did.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. So anyway, he did go from St. Louis via the railroad. He had pockets sewed in his coat and trousers legs, where he hid his gold. He encountered outlaws, but eluded them. When he returned to St. Louis, he picked up his wife, Anne Maria Caroline Henke Pieper, and his daughter Maria, and then they headed to Freeport, Illinois. And according to the family's tradition says that he drove horses for Abraham Lincoln from Freeport to Rockford, Illinois. Okay? So then, all this is going on. I'm like, this is quite a life, okay? From Germany to all these things. So anyway, meanwhile, they're here. They decide they're going to head out to St. Paul, Minnesota, following the Minnesota River. They came up to Scott County, settled on a 10-acre farm near the village of Marystown. Okay? And they had 6 children. So they have one already from the first wife, and then they have 6 other children. We also know that at some point, some of their families from Germany came to the farm and worked. There was a niece and a nephew that came, and they were age 15 and 17, and they worked at the farm. Okay.
You don't know the children's names, do you?
Yes, Margaret and John. And Margaret entered the Benedictine Order of Nuns at St. Joseph in 1895. Okay, so that would be in St. Joseph, Minnesota. Okay, and John continued to work with Anton until his marriage. So John didn't get married. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah. There's a lot of
It's hard. It's hard to, the thing is, it's so many, but there is really interesting stories.
well, the family tree grows too.
And the family grows, and they all have interesting stories. That's why it's hard to pick who to pick for this thing. Okay. Now they know that at this time, Marystown was newly settled, mostly by Germans. Okay. The first St. Mary's of the Purification Church was built of logs in 1856, destroyed by a fire. Before the second church was completed, Mass was held at Anton's farm. Okay. They said that eventually they had St. Mary's of the Purification Church. The school established in the 1850s. They had 2 rooms, one for classrooms and the other was for the priest's dwelling. The 7 children of Anton, Sophie, and Anna Maria attended schools there. And we know generally that Anna Marie died of fever in 1877, and Anton died on October 12, 1899. Both of them are buried here at the Purification Church and Cemetery. Okay? So it gives you a little bit about that thing. I'm also going to switch. Oops, I was. Yes. so I'm talking about this other person there, but that's not her tombstone. But I'm just going to talk about the person who was Anna Tekla Bogelman, and she became Sister Alberta Begerman. She was born on a farm in 1888 in Marystown. She was the second oldest child of John and Helena Pieper Begerman. See the connection? That's the out. If you look through this whole cemetery, almost everyone is related to someone else in the cemetery, right? And the whole thing. Okay.
They said Shakopee is not a family tree; it's a family wreath.
Yeah,
Correct, pretty much.
And it goes over and over. And it's also interesting because, like, even when some of them like moved to Shakopee, and then, but some of them still buried here. Some are buried at the Catholic Cemetery in Shakopee on 10th Street. Even before then, they were at the Calvary Cemetery, which is Eagle Creek, but now it's part of Shakopee there. So it's, but they're all tied in. The names of the people are like all tied into there. So
Well,
it's
just
kind
like I
of
have a great grandfather from St. Louis. He married a lady from New Ulm,
yeah.
and they settled here in Shakopee.
So are they, where's buried?
The last name is Heinen up at the St. Mary's. That's the one I got. I talked to Dan Anderson, who's in charge of the. They have to take the headstone and head it up to
to
St.
move it,
Cloud
yeah.
to shave it down and then redo it because my mother's got to be put on that headstone,
Yeah.
and that's not a cheap thing
It's
either.
it's all,
Yes.
somebody's making a lot of money, but it's not me. But anyway, all I do is clean them. So anyway, so just so we know, then eventually, John and Helena had 2 boys and 2 girls. Okay, but Anna remembered about her grandfather. Oops. Yeah, okay, I'll go on with this. Anna remembered about her grandfather, Anton Pieper, who was living in St. Louis, Missouri when the cholera epidemic broke out, which we talked about, okay? His grandmother, Sophia, and 3 of the 4 children died. Anton, along with the only living child, Helena, gave the nuns $200. They took care of Helena. He headed to Sacramento, California. We know the story about that thing. Eventually, with the money that he did, he bought a farm in Marystown, and that's when Anne Thekla Bergman was born. She was interested in learning. At 5 years old, she insisted on joining her older brother when they started school in Marystown. So they let her go. That's what they used to do that a lot. I know a lot of people, they were like 4 years old and they're like, go to school. Because it needed, okay. But we know that Anna was 9 years old. Her mother died in 1889. 2 years later, her father married a second time to Maria Franzin Bogelman, okay? They had 5 kids from then. So Anna, though, was here, Anna Teklin, not really there, but there. At age 15, she joined the Order of Saint School Sisters of Notre Dame in Milwaukee. She became, final vows was in 1903, and she became Saint Alberta Bergerman. Okay. So, when she was living in Milwaukee, she had in the mother house, there was a person, Sister Cunningham, okay? They had a lot of training. She had their habit. She was sent to Ontario, and she taught grades 7, 8, and 9 for 9th year. Then she came back to Milwaukee. She took her first vows. Apparently you have a first vow and a second vow. Anyway, it's a whole process. I have 2 nuns. I just talked to one of them yesterday. But they're all now in their 80s and 90s, so it's kind of an interest. But anyway, in 1908, she ended up transferred to St. Anne's, also in Canada. Um, and she was privileged to teach English, Latin, and history classes. She also taught for a while in Illinois and then at the Notre Dame in Maryland. Okay. Again, she went back and spent some more in Ontario, and then she got a little bit sick. She went to St. Augusta for recuperating, and then finally she taught again until it was 1957, and then she retired. They said she was an inspiring teacher. She was a cultured woman. When the Ontario government in the early years of the 1900s required that teachers had to have Ontario qualifications, so she was the first American sister received a first-class certificate in 1911. She also got a degree, a BA degree, from Queen's University in New York. She's retired now, okay? She still is very interested, and she could still sitting there and she would be reading the dictionary. People said, they asked her why. She said, when I get to heaven, I want to be able to speak to God in highfalutin English. Excuse me, I don't think you could do any language, my guess, but anyway, that's funny when you said that. And she's very talked about that. She had a large print Bible that she looked all the time. She loved talking about the kids that she grew up and taught, okay? When she became very old, deafness cut off from the participation, but she would always have an appreciative smile and a sly wink when she showed her gratitude. And she celebrated her 100th birthday on September 20th, 1980.
Wow.
She received greetings from the Queen, Prime Minister Trudeau, okay, and Premier Davis. They said all kinds of people had all the celebrations at that. And then basically when she was 102 years old, on September 25th, 1982, she died at the Canadian Mother House. And then she was at the cemetery there. So that is a family member, but this is her that actually had a cemetery, a little small one there that you see. They said, they asked a lot of people at that time when she died, and she said, Sister Maria said, there are many unique women and a marvelous teacher. Whenever I met one of her students, they go into ecstasy about her teaching. I'm a bit envious I didn't have her as a teacher. And Sister Claire, who was 83-year-old nuns, and she remembers that she felt that everyone in the classroom felt that they were important. She said she could make the world's works of Shakespeare come alive. And one other person, Sister Antonia, said, quite a dramatic teacher, but very regal too. According to St. Clair, she didn't walk across the room. She floated. I think that's a good thing to say about a person. So
well, if she had a habit on, you wouldn't see her feet, would you?
That's true, so it could be. She could be just floating, you never know. But it's just kind of an interesting story. All right, now we're going to move. Here we're talking about this one right here. Okay? But when you see it, it's really hard to even read it, which is kind of sad, but anyway. This is Magdalena, and she was called Lena, Henkels, Deller, Gersmeyer, Grunhofer. That's a lot of names, right? That means she got married a few times. they usually have a reason, and we'll find out. This is from 1858 to 1903. I don't have a picture of her. Do you, by the way, have a picture of her?
I do not.
I know, I don't think they're, that's so annoying when they don't have a picture. Just because it's nice to have one. But anyway, Magdalene, or Lena, we say, was born in Marystown in 1858, in September. They don't say the day, just that September. Do you know, you probably may know the day. But
Yeah, I just have September.
yeah, me too, it's kind of weird. Okay. Her parents were Henry Henkel, who was born in Belgium and died in Shakopee, and Maria Victoria Hortensia, that's said wrong, but anyway, Hortensia Hertis Lafante Henkels. They were also born in Belgium, died in Shakopee. Lena, when she was 20, married Christopher Deller in September 23rd, 1879 in Marystown. And they lived in a farm near Marystown. They had 2 sons, Chris and John. John is the one we're going to talk about, tied into that also, okay? Remember that about more than 100 years ago, in Minnesota, there was a deadly virus which there's no treatment. It was called the Spanish flu. It actually was called Spanish flu. You wonder why. Were they from Spain? It had nothing to do with that. It was just because the United States didn't let people know that this flu was happening in the war, World War I. So they blamed it on, the only people who talked about it was France, because they weren't involved with the war. So they were telling the story about it. So that's what they call it, the Spanish flu. But they had nothing to do with it, okay? It really started in World War I, right at the end of the war, okay? According to the Shakopee story, the book, the Shakopee story, that the book, by the way, they're $5 now. Cheap. On page 284, it said arrived in Shakopee October of 1918. By October 20th, 1918, public meetings were forbidden. Schools were closed, and people died by the dozens, according to the Shakopee Argus. They considered it the worst public health catastrophe since the bubonic plague of the 13th century. It moved swiftly through the country, killing more than 500,000 Americans, nearly 10 times the number of the people who were killed in the battlefields during World War I. So it's kind of strange, okay? They said an army captain, physician, talked about that the people they had purplish, reddish, grayish, ashen color of the patient's face, especially around the lips, but sometimes across the whole body. They'd hemorrhage everywhere. They said every sheet, towel, pillowcase, gown, whether it was on the patient, the doctor, the nurse, or orderly, was purplish red. They said many people died literally drowning on the bloody waters inside their own bodies. Sounds like a fun time to be around, right? Now remember, Lena, we're talking about here, and Chris Deller, their first child was John Henry Deller. She married Teresa Fisher on September 9th, 1903. John Henry, at age 37, is registered for the World War I draft on November 12, 1918. His occupation was hotel and saloon. That's what it says, his job. Now, when I said that, I'm like, well, does that mean he lived in a hotel and went to the saloon? But I think it just means that he probably worked at both a hotel and a saloon in Shakopee. Within 6 years later, both he and his wife died one day in life. According to the Shakopee story, Mr. and Mrs. John Deller, not this guy, but his son, and their baby represent the most concentration attack. They were buried simultaneously from St. Mark's, okay? But their remains, like other flu victims, were not taken inside the church. They didn't want it. They didn't want it in there because they thought it was trauma. So they could just be in the horse and buggy. They'd drive by St. Mark's, and they'd be like, "God bless you, go away." It's basically what happened. It's really interesting. And so they, again, one died on October 30th, that was John, and then his wife died on Halloween in 1918. And they're buried at St. Mark's Cemetery, which is now Catholic Cemetery on 10th Avenue in Shakopee. The three children of them, okay, John Henry and Teresa Fisher Hinkle's three children became orphans. Loretta, which is Laura, was 12 years old. Elvira, which is Vera, was 10, and Edmund was 7 years old. I'm going to ask you to tell a little bit about this in just a second, your view from that, because it's your relative, right? Okay,
Yeah.
but I'm going to go on it and talk about the rest of the thing and finish it, and then I'll get to you. Okay.
And I'll just fill in.
Yeah. So Lena, husband died. Okay. 2 years later, she married for a second time to Henry Gerstenmaier. They had two children together, Henry and Frank. Then Henry died. Lena married again to Peter Grundhofer.
Grundhofer.
Yeah, I know I can't say it, but say it a little louder so we get it correct. Say it a little louder.
Grundhofer.
Thank you. Okay. So anyway, we know that Lena eventually became very sick for about a year with cancer. The cancer was both in the stomach and in the liver. She died on December 2nd, 1903 in Marystown. And now, tell me a little bit more about the family.
Okay. Well, here's an interesting tidbit. When you we talked about the legal graves over there.
Yeah.
So that grave ties into this family. So Laura, the oldest daughter of Teresa Fisher and John Henry, she is a descendant, and she married a boy from St. Paul, and they share that ancestor.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of
Interesting. Yeah.
but I was told, and who Laura married was my great uncle, my mom's uncle, and the legal family moved to St. Paul, but the Deller family, a legal married a Deller, and and then we go up to the legal, so we're
All tied into that.
yeah, it's
Jeez.
all.
All over here, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, so that the legals started in Marystown, went to St. Paul, and then my mom married a Marystowner, so the legals came back to
that.
Marystown.
And aren't there some graves that are kind of weird? It's like that are tying to that family tree.
Those
Oh,
iron
legal,
crosses.
yeah. So,
Yeah, right there.
yeah.
So those are my third great grandparents.
Those are really weird as a grade, isn't it? But I mean, I really like it, but they're hard to find much more information about them.
They're
Right.
common in Europe. I was just in a cemetery in France, and it's full of iron crosses. They're
Like
also
that.
very common in Czech and
So
Bohemian.
it may tied into that.
Yeah.
My grandfather was in North Dakota.
Oh wow!
He's a German commercial.
I mean, it's beautiful. What's nice about it is they don't fall apart.
That's probably the
someone
point
who
of the
wouldn't follow-
conversation right there. They don't fall apart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And yet you can't put too much information.
exactly. So that's the other part.
But I think they originally had gravestones like this, and when my grandfather, my mom's dad, after she married my dad, he knew that his ancestors came from Scott County, but he didn't know quite where. And then after they got married, he came and saw the gravestones that were in bad shape, so he had
Those things put in there.
put in there. So anyway, the story from my from Aunt Laura, who is her daughter-in-law.
Right.
Is that right? Anyway, Laura was her granddaughter. So Laura married Fred Legal. They lived in St. Paul, and so Fred and Laura were at all our family gatherings. They never had children. She died when she was in her 60s, so I was probably 10 years old at the time. And so from her family story, the parents, yes, they got married and they, just what you said, they died. But from her perspective, they owned, there was a hotel bar called the Minneapolis House.
Yes.
Okay, they owned that. And when they died, an attorney from Shakopee took care of the estate. And there was no money left. That's what.
So that's where they became orphans.
So
right?
so they had no money. So yes, they did go live with Grandma and Grandpa Fisher. And I would
That's
get
how it
stories from my grandma, who was best friends with Laura. They'd take the train from St. Paul out to Shakopee to visit Grandma and Grandpa Fisher.
Yeah.
So,
It's really interesting in terms of that is also when you're looking at a lot of the stones, if someone dies and you have children, what do you do with them?
That's kind of what's going on with me. Me and my brothers are on my dad's headstone, which is right down there.
Yeah.
We've got a plot there. It's already a full lot with my great-grandparents, my grandparents, an aunt and uncle, and all that stuff. So it'll be interesting when that transpires, but that'll be 30 or 40 years before that happens to me.
And hopefully you won't be around when that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting with that whole process, and then how to figure out, because what often happens is if there's no other family members, then it goes to just like a neighbor or someone who says I'll take care of them, which just makes it very interesting too. Okay. All right. So really, again, some of the stories are interesting. Now we're going to head down where I see the two over. I'm glad that you guys all find a nice place with shade, and I sit here in the
Blame Mother
sun.
Nature for the sun angle.
All move back.
But you're getting a nice tan.
You gotta
huh?
keep up
I'm
your
actually
tan anyway.
I'm glad anyway, because I'd hate for you to suffer, right? I'm a good
We'll be
Catholic
suffering from
kid.
tomorrow till next week.
All right, so this is Catherine Mitchell Grumish.
Metro.
Yeah, that too. Thank you. Would you make sure you call out for that? I don't mind, because I like.
Yeah, renames different. yes.
I'll forget it anyway, but I want to make sure I have it right. Okay. Katharina was born in Luxembourg. Catherine's parents, John and Katharina Melgett
Belgium. Yeah.
Mitchell. Go ahead and just say it correct, so it's
Because I've
correct.
heard different pronunciations.
I know, and in my part is it's not going to help because with my stroke I can never remember. I just look at no, they're separate. All right, okay. Anyway, them and their family of 5 children, including Katharina, arrived to the United States in 1846. They had come from the village in Luxembourg. You know, the let me see. I'm gonna skip this part because it's complicated and not that important for the thing here. Okay. It's really interesting because the family, the birth records for the daughters of the family show a pattern which is quite confusing. The first two were named Anna Katharina and Anna Maria. Okay. Then came another, Katharina. Okay. The fourth daughter and the fifth child were also named Katharina. Finally, the last one is Maria. They're just trying to make confused for people for the future because they go like, why do you have so many names with the same name? But anyway, it's really the way they did it. Okay. They also, the sixth daughter and the daughter number 8, born in 1846, were named Maria Katharina, but later became known as Margaret. The seventh daughter, who was born in Wisconsin in 1849, was baptized Anna Katharina and became Katharina O'Kate. I'm just letting you know, just because the idea is that there were like several names, but they didn't necessarily they used the first name and the second name. Sometimes they would focus just on the first, the next person would be named with the second. They just like using the names a lot, I guess. I don't know. They arrived in 1846, okay? The family settled in the town of Belgium, Wisconsin, in the community called Holy Cross. It was about 6 miles from Port Washington.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
Belgium, Wisconsin is a huge community of Luxembourgers. In fact, the American Luxembourg Association is located there.
Thanks, and to mention that, it also says the name of the town, Holy Cross. They actually says how to say it in Luxembourg also. Helleg. Then it was KRA with the little dots over it, IZ. Okay. It's all about 6 miles from Port Washington. The first church in Holy Cross, a log structure, was already standing when they came. They said it's also is that they didn't have a church bell at that time. So they'd had the Angelus, which is the sound that they'd do. They do it with a shepherd horn because there's no money for the church bell. The family, Mitchell's, whatever, yeah, moved to Marystown in about 1854 or 1855. According to the 1860 census, the federal census, it says John family had 2 children living at home. That was Margaret, age 14, that's the 8th child, who was Maria Katharina, and Catherine, age 11. They were born as Anna Katharina. And he said John Mitchell had real estate valued about $600 and personal property about $500. So that was pretty good. In the 1870s census for U.S., it said John and Katharina were living with their son Matthias, wife Katrina, and their 2 children, John and Nicholas. John Mitchell died March 2nd, 1878 in Marystown. John Baptist Grumish and Catherine Mitchell had 3 boys, all born in Marystown. And there's actually a picture of them. Just look how fancy schmancy. But what I like about it is the stone there. She died in January of 1872 in Marystown and buried here at this thing here. So that's Catherine Grumish. There's a picture. Then over there, then over there, then over there. So how are you doing? People doing okay so far? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't know how this last one is going to turn out because it kept skipping out of video. And Wes will have a good time editing it.
So just as an FYI, her mother, Catherine Mountain, they're buried right there.
Oh, okay.
I've done his, but I haven't done hers.
You know, I took care of a John Grumish like 40 years ago out at Valley View in Jordan, and he was from Marystown. That was back in the 80s.
That was
He had one leg. He had one leg that was amputated below the knee.
It sounds familiar, but I'm from the first Grumish family, and I don't know a whole lot about the second, about Josephine's.
Okay.
So
Are we going here?
We're going to talk about this one, which is right over here.
oh,
But I'm just going to just sit up here.
Yes, it is.
Okay, the person who's back over, it's interesting, just take it. Here, I think we'll turn it, so. Done it? I think so. We'll find out. Perfect. Okay, I just let you know, because, again, if you go online, ShakopeeHeritage.org, and look for the people of Shakopee, which is the name of the town at one point. It'll say Adam Geis, but in between it says GEI, and then there's this thing. That was actually what they said in Germany all the time. It was see, like that. See?
It's a double S is what it is.
Yes, it is.
Is
yeah.
that what it is? Is that what that is?
And you'll see that when you go on Ancestry and stuff. So I always like to put it in there because I kind of like, shows they change around a little bit too, and it's good. Okay. He was born in Bavaria. When he was 7 years old, he moved with his parents to America. They lived in Milwaukee for 5 years and then moved to Chicago and Racine, Wisconsin. It's really interesting that so many people, when they first came over, they end up being in Illinois or Wisconsin first before come here. Just interesting thing. Okay, they came to St. Paul on July of 1853. In the spring of 1854, they took a claim in Sand Creek Township, which is basically part of Marystown area.
Is it right off like 169?
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
I believe, yeah.
They had 6 children at the time, and they lived in a log shanty almost at the heart of the dense wood. Okay. Adam remembers that they were in the township, and he remembers the people were there. Peter Fall, Mergens, Michael and Peter Hartman, J.B. Grumish, Chris Henches, John Henches, and M and J Buddy, Budde. So it's funny because a lot of these popped up in other things we find too. So anyway, there was an article about Adam Geis, and in the article, which is in 1929, he remembered clearing the land, and he also found time to hunt and fish, or trap, I should say. He said he hunted deer, wolves, wild cats, foxes, and other animals, and trapped otter, mink, and muskrats. Once he shot 3 deer in one day. On another occasion, he speared 73 muskrats in a few hours.
That's not surprising. That's just the way they did it back then. My grandfather's the
I
same
know.
way. He was a fur trader.
Exactly,
Yep.
yeah. He said that Adam said he worked until he was 23 years old. Then he enlisted in Company 1, 4th Minnesota, to serve in the Civil War. He served throughout the war, and he was obedient to the Sherman Yankee boys at the Memorial March from Atlanta to the sea. In 1865, Adam bought 40 acres of raw acres in Eagle Creek Township. On January 23rd, 1866, Adam married Barbara Bruck Geis. They resided in a farm home for 38 years. And they continued to add more land. They ended up with 326 acres of land. Probably one of them is now the amphitheater.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Okay. But we do know that they had 14 children who were born by these people, which is more common than you think back then, too. Big families.
My dad was the youngest of 10.
Mine was young. My dad was youngest of 9. Yeah, it was just the way it did. In 1904, Adam and Barbara moved to a small farm adjoining Marystown. And in 1924, they moved to a cozy home fronting the highway in Marystown. So, right over there. Somewhere, okay. At age 92, Adam was ill health for several months. The heart ailment became grave, and he died August 9th, 1933. He had lived 80 years in Scott County, 60 years in Marystown, and he was one of the last three comrades of Private Charles Menage and Joseph Spilmek, I think. And he was buried here in Marystown. Among the descendants were 72 grandchildren, 83 great-grandchildren. Barbara was died in 1934, buried next to her husband. So that's Private John Geis. And I just make a little bit, well, show a picture of them. So. There's a picture of the two of them. But he was well known, especially because he was from Marystown and he was in the Civil War. That was a big thing. I'll just add with that her wife, Barbara, and her family, they were in Wisconsin. And when she was 5 years old, they arrived to St. Joseph Township in Scott County. Again, we know that Barbara's husband was Adam. They was in the war. The house of the Brick family is just interesting to look at, because here's a picture of them showing, and I'll just pass it around to see it, but it's just kind of an interesting of the Brick family. I know people who are called Brick, and I didn't know how they, and that's how I think this tied into them. You just kind of pass it around so you can see it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, just know that during her last 15 years of her life, Barbara lived with her daughter, Mary Ann Geis Hennen. Okay? They said Barbara had a slight cold for several days, but 3 days before she died, she had the privilege of having to become a great-great-grandmother. Her great-granddaughter, Margaret Sandelwell, had a child on February 14th. That's amazing to be a great.
What
great
year?
There were 72 grandchildren.
It doesn't say the year on there, so I'm sure I just didn't put it on there. Okay. They said, remember she had kind of this cold kind of thing? They said it became severe. She died of apoplexy. Apoplexy. Today they call it a stroke. I know that because I had one.
My dad died of one of those
From a
too.
stroke.
It's like
The
emphysema, COPD.
Yeah, I know.
apoplexy.
That was emphysema when he passed, and my stepfather was COPD.
Yeah, it's funny how they did that. Okay. Again, she's buried at the cemetery right over there. Okay. I'm gonna